All right, so we're gonna do epidemiology chapter review 14. We're gonna go through the whole slide just because as I was talking about, the slides are where it's at, and what lecture was. So I got side by side. I will put it side by side. I don't have it side by side yet, but the slides basically, and then the my notes because there's like 100 slides, and obviously we're not going to need to know each one of them, so what's important, and I got the sense of what was important from my notes, so we're going to go over both. All right, let's do this. Let's roll. Let me share my screen. Here you go. All right, so let me just fix this here. Oh shit, did that blow up my whole computer? No. Hopefully you guys can still see what I'm looking at. If not, then okay, it's running. It's working. All right. All right, cool. I knew you guys can see my face. I didn't know you guys could see my face. I just checked my own live stream from my phone. Anyways, epidemiology. Here we are scrolling down. So what is epidemiology? General types of relationship microbes have with bodies and their hosts, sources of infection, what that infectious disease spread along the host, ways that infections diseases. So yeah, this is what we're doing today. So let's open up with symbiotic relationship. Epidemiology is built upon symbiotic relationships, two things, which means that two things living together. So we have this relationship with a ton of microorganisms. Most of them don't benefit us; they just kind of live there, but it's beneficial for them. So we have this huge number, 100 trillion. It's crazy. Symbiotic relationships between microbes and their hosts. So we have a couple different types. Members of symbiotic relationships are referred to as symbionts. Symbionts. Okay, that's actually a good vocab word. Symbionts. Types of symbiosis. So we have mutualism, commensalism, amensalism, and parasitism. All right, so this is my first thing that I'm citing here. So organism 1 in this case represents the organism, and organism 2 would represent you. So in mutualistic, both of these benefit. So an example of this would be the bacteria, organism 1, are benefiting from living in your colon because there's food, and then you, organism 2, benefit because your food is getting broken down better. Commensalism benefits the organism and doesn't benefit you, but you're not harmed or anything. It's just you're neutral to it. And so a good example of this would be mites in human hair follicles. I would just say that that's kind of a weird one, but basically all of your most of your microbiota is just commensalist. They're just kind of there. Amensalism is the interesting one because amensalism is when the organism is harmed and the host is not harmed. So an example of this would be the fungus that produce insulin, which kills all the bacteria around it. So that's an example of a symbiotic relationship, even though it doesn't seem like it. Parasitism, something pretty familiar, benefits the parasite or the bacteria when organism 2 is being harmed. So tuberculosis, bacteria in the lung. Okay, so let's see what the next important thing is. Microbiota of humans. Give a quick rundown. So microbiota of humans just kind of represents all the bacteria that live on you. So microbes that colonize a body without normally causing disease constitutes the body's microbiome. So yeah, all the bacteria that live on you that are not causing bacteria. So also termed normal flora or indigenous microbiota. So there are two types of microbiotas. There's resident type and transient type. So for resident microbiota is typically colonize the surface of the skin and basically all surfaces. These microbiota do not typically harm the host while they benefit from feeding on the cellular waste. So this would be an example of commensalism. Uh, like we said, it benefits the bacteria, but it doesn't really benefit the host. And they are part of normal microbiota throughout life. So yeah, I think these are kind of like the long term guys. Is a way to think about it. Here in my notes, we have the same couple thing. And this is just overall like where they live. Basically just the whole body and every surface. So now we go into transient microbiota. Transient microbiota remain in the body for only a few hours, days, or months before disappearing. Um, and this is because they get outcompeted by other microorganisms, eliminated by body defenses or physical changes in the body that dislodge them. And so basically the difference is that the transient microbiota are just a microbiota that the name that microbiota are given when they're outcompeted and they don't stay long term. Um, so let's go into acquisition. You develop your microbiome from when you were born, basically, because there's bacteria everywhere, and when you breathe. Yeah, your first meals provide the progenitors for resident microbiota. Yeah, so much of one's resident microbiota establishes during the first months of life. So, all right. So now we're going on to a new kind of section here. Pathogenic microorganisms. Pathogen. A living organism that causes disease in a host. Pathogenic organisms can be viruses, bacteria, fungi, protists, eukaryotic, and protists are eukaryotic organism that is not an animal, land, plant, or fungus. Examples such as protozoans are amoebas or simple alga, typo here, parasitic worms. And so here we're gonna talk about how normal microbiota become opportunistic pathogens, become ortho, uh, how normal microbiota become opportunistic. So opportunistic pathogens are just normal microbiota that don't cause disease, but normal microbiota that cause disease under certain circumstances. So conditions that would provide these opportunities and these special circumstances would be introduction to normal microbiota to into an unusual site. So here's an example from E. coli from the intestine, which would be considered normal microbiota in the intestine, into the urethra. Immune suppression, changes in relative abundance of normal microbiota, stressful conditions. Um, so yeah, here in my notes, I have like when you get poked or stabbed, that causes it causes the disease to get somewhere where it's not supposed to, and then in that new environment, it can outcompete everybody else and infect you. All right, reservoir of infectious diseases in humans. Both pathogens cannot survive for long outside of the human body. Oh wow, that was it about the opportunistic bacteria. Most pathogens cannot survive for long outside the human body, so they kind of live in reservoirs. So reservoirs of infection are sites where pathogens are maintained as a source of infection. So basically where they're living before they get to you. Three types of reservoirs. We have animal reservoirs, human carriers, and non-living reservoirs. Right. So in my notes here, we have reservoir of infection, sites where pathogens are maintained as a source of infection. Example, an IV, catheter, dog, human reservoir, animal reservoir. So let's go to animal reservoirs here. So zoonooses. This one's easy to remember because zoo animal. Diseases naturally spread from animal host to humans. Many pathogens that infect domestic or wild animals can also infect humans. So zoonooses are here. Let's look it up just so I'm sure. What are zoonooses? An infection disease that can spread from animals to humans. So that's it. People acquire these diseases through various routes, like direct contact with animal or its waste, eating animals, blood sucking arthropods, like mosquitoes. Humans are usually dead end hosts to zoonotic pathogens as transmission because it's favored from animal to human. And these are difficult to eradicate. And the reason that it's not really uh, zoonooses aren't really transferred from human to human is because we're not really biting each other. I remember he explained that. So here's some common zoonooses: ringworm, interesting, rabies, anthrax, Lyme disease. All right, so now we're going to move on to human carriers. Yeah. So human carriers. Human carriers with active disease are important reservoirs of infection. So pretty popular. Asymptomatic infected individuals before or after a disease can also be infective to others. Some individuals eventually develop illness while others never get sick. So some people with AIDS will never uh, have too serious symptoms. Healthy carriers may have defensive systems that protect them. So yeah, so that's just kind of highlighting how people that you're still carrying the disease, but you're still healthy because you're fighting it off. Let's see what I have here. Some eventually can protect them. Okay, let's go. So now we're on to the non-living reservoirs. So this includes soil, water, and food can be reservoirs of infection. So soil can harbor species of bacteria that cause botulism. Fecally contaminated soil, for example, can be contaminated with feces and urine containing parasitic worms. Meats and vegetables can also harbor pathogens by extension. It seems like we had a break time here. All right. Exposure to microbes. Hold on, let me check something. All right, cool. Exposure to microbes, contamination, and infection. Contamination. The mere presence of microbes in your body or on the body. So contamination is just, definition for this word here. We can look at my notes. The mere presence of microbes in or on the body, and infection is when the organism evade the body's external defenses, multiplies and establishes into the body. And disease, I think, is when oh we don't have it here. But I think later on we'll talk about it. Disease is like when it's actually multiplies enough to have negative effects on your body. So here we'll just go over it one more time. Contamination, the mere presence of microbes in or on the body. Infection is when organisms evade your external defenses and multiply and establish into your body. So actually, when they set up shop. Outcomes for contamination. Contaminants remain where they were first contacted on the body and without causing harm, become part of the resident normal microbiota. Pathogens overcome body's external defenses, and so infection is when the infection may or may not result in disease. So yeah, that was the line there. I think we'll go over that definition, but later. But from what I remember, it's just multiplies to the point where it adversely affects your body. All right, so let's go to common portals of entry. So basically, where sites where pathogens enter the body. So there are three major pathways: the skin, three major pathways: skin, mucous membrane, and placenta. Entry via parenteral route circumvents the usual portals. Blood or tissue, bodily saliva, secretions. Routes of entry for invading pathogens. Nose, you know the deal. Okay. Let me look at my notes here. Pathways, skin, mucous membrane, skin. So yeah, no, we're gonna talk about skin. Skin, the outer layer of dead skin cells acts as a barrier to pathogens, which is important. So some pathogens can enter through openings in the skin, such as hair follicles and sweat glands or cuts and bites. So yeah, basically any opening, can things can get in, bacteria. Additionally, the larvae of some parasitic worms are capable of burrowing through the skin to reach underlying tissues, and some fungi digest the dead outer layers of the skin, thereby gaining access to deeper moisture areas within the body. It's pretty interesting. All right, so here's a sebaceous gland. All right, so mucous membranes is the biggest portal of entry. Line all body cavities that are open to the environment. Provide a moist, warm environment hospitable to pathogens. Respiratory tract is the most common site of entry. Entry is through the nose, mouth, or eyes. So yeah, gastrointestinal tract may be a route of entry, but must survive the acidic pH of the stomach. So like skin, the mucous membrane is tightly packed but thin, so more hospitable for an easier portal of entry than skin. Yes, that's what I have here. The placenta typically forms effective barrier to pathogens, but in 2% of pregnancies, pathogens cross the placenta and infect the fetus. It can cause spontaneous abortion, birth defects, and premature birth. So that's pretty sad. Parenteral route. Not a regular portal of entry, means by which a portal of entry can be circumvented. Oh, so this route is just like, circumventing all the other things I mentioned, the skin membranes. Pathogens deposited directly into tissues beneath the skin or mucous membrane, such as occurs in uh, oh uh, here, let me look this up. What does that word mean? I thought it was going to be placenta related because parenteral. Parenteral route. So pathogens deposit directly into the tissue. So this is like getting a cut and stuff. Parenteral just means circumventing the stomach, which I guess would make sense, It's anything that isn't affecting your mucous membranes is just cutting into you. So let's go, keep on going down. The role of adhesion and infection. Adhesion, we kind of know this. Microorganisms attach themselves to cells, and they have to attach. Required to sexually successfully establish a colony within the host, and there are such things as adhesion factors, which help in this help to adhere to cells, like specialized structures. Uh, Structures like suckers or hooks, attachment molecules such as lipoproteins or glycoproteins molecules. So this would an example of this would be like the viruses that we were just learning about. How viruses have glycoproteins on their envelope. Enveloped ones have glycoproteins. So that would be an example of attachment proteins. Ligands, known as adhesins, in bacteria that bind to specific receptors or trigger a cellular response. Uh, Adhesins found in flagella. So these adhesins and attachment molecules could be found in the flagella, the cell something known as attachment proteins on viruses. Yeah. So here's some photos. Uh, the ligand here, ligand attaching to a glycoprotein, and so that's kind of helps show the. And this is kind of talking about how all these some of these factors can be pretty specific, like ligands. So let's talk about some adhesion. Here I have some notes here. If you block the ligand they attach to, like for a virus or bacteria, then they cannot infect you. Just because adhesion is needed, if they cannot attach because of medicine, they cannot infect. So that's how medicines kind of go at it. So here's some more information about adhesion. Some bacteria, whooping cough, have one more type of adhesion. Yeah, so just adhesion is just just a what was it called? Attachment molecule. Yeah, just kind of makes it easier. Adhesion. Oh, so yeah, I actually already said this. Some bacterial pathogens attach to each other to form biofilm. So that's kind of an example of a secondary role of adhesion is the forming of biofilms. Inability to attach viruses. Yeah. Avirulent is a good word to know. It can't infect. So dental plaque. So okay, so here's what I was talking about earlier. Infection is the invasion of the host by the pathogen. So evading your body's systems and setting up shop. But disease results only if the pathogen multiplies sufficiently to adversely affect the normal functions of the host. So disease is also referred to as morbidity, the state of being diseased or unhealthy within the population. So morbidity, another another vocab word. All right, let's keep going. So here we have some stuff about manifestation of disease. So symptoms and signs and syndromes. So symptoms kind of went over are subjective and characteristics of disease felt only by the patient. So this is like feeling I'm tired or I feel weird. Signs would be objective manifestations of disease observed or measured by others. So this would be like temperature. And syndrome is uh, symptoms and signs that characterize a disease or abnormal condition. So yeah. here we have some notes. Asymptomatic or subclinical infections lack symptoms but may still have signs of infection. All right. Typical manifestation of disease. So, here's some more examples. So, symptoms: pain, nausea. Like, you can't really measure pain, can't really measure nausea, but signs, swelling, you can see all this stuff. And you can pause and read that if you would like. Terminology of disease, he said we didn't really notice, but just take a quick look at it if you want. The nature of infectious disease, causation of disease is etiology. So, study cause of disease, diseases that have various causes. Um, so, so here we have a kind of a list. Idiopathic disease means that no one knows the cause. Hereditary, by genetic code received from parents. Congenital, anatomically and physiological defects present at birth. Caused by drugs, infection, or X-ray exposure. I don't think we need to know that just because he didn't really go over it. Uh, Causation of disease. I think he might throw in idiopathic because that's like the only word in that whole list that he pointed out. So that one's kind of easy to remember just because idiopathic is such a striking word. Causation of disease. So this is where Koch's postulates come into play. So germ theory of disease, infection by pathogenic microorganisms cause of disease. So that's what germ theory is. So Robert Koch developed a set of postulates that one must satisfy to prove a particular pathogen causes a particular disease. Um, so one, suspected agent must be present in every single case of the disease. Two, the agent must be isolated and grown in a pure culture. Three, the cultured agent must cause the disease when it's inoculated into a healthy, susceptible experimental host. Um, Four, the same agent should be found in a diseased experimental host. It is critical that all conditions must be satisfied in order. Uh, but anyways, this is kind of interesting just because we were talking about it in class. I don't know if you remember, but the ethics of the Koch's postulates and for tests, just because to prove that AIDS, AIDS is being caused by a certain virus, you would have to give someone AIDS to satisfy Koch's postulates. So that was just an ethical thing that he mentioned, and he gave some talk about. So I thought I'd reiterate that. All right, here we are. Exceptions to Koch's postulates. Some pathogens have not been cultured in a lab. Some diseases caused by a combination of pathogens or a combination of pathogen, physical, and environmental factors. Ethical considerations preclude applying Koch's postulates to disease that occur in humans only. So that if it occurs in humans only, you can't really test it on rats, which is like the workaround for some of the other nasty viruses. So yeah, so it's just interesting. In some cases, the application of a third postulate, inoculation of an agent into a healthy host, cannot be justified. That makes sense. Like, I wouldn't really want to give someone AIDS, just to prove it. Therefore, for ethical reasons, scientists never applied Koch's postulates in the case of HIV. So, um, however, observations of virus in the placenta of infected mothers and accidental, so just from mother to child, was used to satisfy that postulate. Um, Anyways, okay. So here's some other vocab words. Here we have the Star of David. Nature, the nature of infectious disease, virulence, factors, and infectious agents. So pathogenicity is the ability of an organism to cause disease. So an example would be COVID. It was, it spread super well. Okay, and then virulence is the degree of pathogenicity. Uh, I don't like how he wrote this. Yeah, so the internet says essentially measuring the degree of damage a pathogen can inflict on its host organism. So that makes sense because when I think of virulent wind, I think of like, really, really strong, crazy wind. And pathogenicity just makes sense to me. So adhesion factors, if it's really capable of attaching to lots of your cells and it can multiply even better and make you sick faster. Biofilms, just because they're so hard to, you know, infiltrate. Extracellular enzymes, which would really turn up your virulence because it would be eating at you. Toxins, because it would be eating and, uh, putting toxins into your body. Antiphagocytic factors, it makes it hard for your white blood cells to eat. Uh, Here I also have endotoxins. When like lipid A, so that would make something make a bacteria virulence higher if it is gram negative, just because lipid A. All right. So virulence factors of infectious agents. So extracellular enzymes help pathogen maintain infection, evade and avoid body defenses. Important to virulence. Um, yeah, I don't think you went over this too hard. So, secreted by extracellular enzymes, secreted by pathogens, dissolve structure of chemicals in the body, help pathogen maintain infection and evade. Important to virulence. So this one would be, especially virulent. Here we have some of the uh, some examples like hyaluronidase dissolves hyaluronic acid, or the glue that keeps animal cells together. Collagenase, coagulase, kinase. Um, so yeah, that's just how the how extracellular enzymes are virulence factors. All right. So here we go on to toxins, chemicals that harm tissues or trigger host immune response that cause damage. So in an extreme stage would be toxemia. Toxemia refers to the presence of toxins in the bloodstream. So that it's not good because it brings the toxins beyond the site of infection. So there are two types of toxins. I think this is definitely important to know. Exotoxins are toxins released by living bacteria. So these bacteria are just pumping these out in order to keep the host down, and so it's able to like still infect. Endotoxins, pres- endotoxins are toxins present inside the bacterial cell that are released only when the cell dies. So an example of this would be lipid A, as I described before. So here's a good example. Exotoxins are mainly gram positive, uh, and endotoxins are gram negative. All right. Principal types of exotoxins. So these are very toxic. Here I have a note. Um, So examples include cytotoxins, which kill host cells in general. Um, so that makes sense because cyto, cytoplasm, just like cyto meaning cell. So cytotoxin kills host cell. Neurotoxins, which specifically interfere with nerve function, that one in the name. Enterotoxin, which affects the lining of the gastrointestinal tract, which also kind of is in the name when I think about intestines being spelled wrong. Enterotoxins. Um, Virulence factors. Now we're on to endotoxins. So this is the gram-negative. Lipidase stimulates the body release chemicals that causes fever, inflammations, and he always highlights how this could be potentially worse than the original disease if you kill them off too fast. Uh, so that was a whole lecture, but we still have more to go. Looks like he went over the whole thing again because I have notes on from a different day. Your skin is very densely packed, so this will be some review for us. Nothing gets inside really, uh, or except if you get cut. I'm looking at this side of the screen now. Or ingrown pore. The most popular place is mucous membranes, so mouth, nose. Because it is moist, warm, consistent, and has lots of food, the biggest common entry is your breathing. So that's pretty interesting. Gastrointestinal tract may be a route of entry, role of adhesion, virulence, how badly it can hurt you, pathogenicity, how easily it can spread. A virulent strain can't attach, which makes sense because virulence, how bad it can hurt you. A virulent, it can't hurt you, so it can't, meaning it can't attach. So contamination. So contamination again. So this is a kind of the some of the stuff we did. This is actually some good recap. Contamination is just the mere exposure uh, of a microorganism on you. Infection is the act of the is when the microorganism infects your body and multiplies, invades it, and basically sets up shop. Disease is when it multiplies so much that it hurts your body. And another word for disease is morbidity, the state of being diseased. Symptoms, subjective, signs, objective, syndrome, the two together to characterize a disease. Asymptomatic or subclinical, no symptoms or signs. Why did we go over this? This is like literally the same thing. Uh, yeah, and exotoxins they secrete. Endotoxin uh, they release when they die. Cytotoxin kills the cells because cyto means cells. It's toxic to the cell. Neurotoxin toxic to the neuron. Enterotoxin gastrointestinal. Entero kind of sounds like intestine. Okay, so here looks like uh, yeah. Let me look at this. Antiphagotic. Uh, so prevents the host. I'm back onto the slides now. Factors prevent phagocytosis by the host phagotic cells. Allows pathogen to remain in host for a longer time, resulting in more severe disease. Uh, so so yeah, that's how it would. That's why it's a virulence factor. Anyways, we're now on to here. So where I'm on slide 6 of page 6 of 8 on my notes. So that's good. So that means we're almost finishing up here. I'm gonna grab some water. Dang, talking for so long. It's probably like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. All right, so here we are at stages of infectious disease. So first of all, we see the incubation period, no signs or symptoms. Prodromal period. So no signs. Never mind. Incubation period, no signs or symptoms. Prodromal, vague general symptoms. And illness is where the most severe signs and symptoms occur. Decline is when these symptoms and signs begin to relieve. And convalescence is when there's no signs or symptoms, but you're still infectious. Uh, yeah. So okay. So now we're going to go through these. Incubation period, time between infection and appears. Time between infection and uh, time between infection and first signs and symptoms. So time depends on the virulence of the infective agent, infective dose, so how many viruses or how many bacteria actually landed on you, state and health of immune system, nature of pathogen and replication time, site of infection. Um, so here we kind of have some interesting notes here. So staphylococcus foodborne infection, when you get what's it called, food poisoning, you feel terrible after 1 day. So that incubation period is only 1 day. But leprosy and AIDS are, AIDS is 1 to 8 years, and leprosy is 10 to 30 years. So that's really crazy. So the prodromal period again was like the first signs and symptoms. So like mild. What is malaise? I keep on seeing that. I feel like I should know that word. Malaise. General feeling of discomfort, unease, or lack of well-being. Muscle aches, vague general symptoms. An illness is the most severe part, which follows the prodromal period. Most severe part of the infection. But yeah, you're infectious throughout the entire time, which will make more sense later. I was reading off of this. Signs and symptoms are most evident and are strongest stage when physicians usually see the patient. So decline is when the patient's immune system responds or medical treatment helps vanquish pathogens. Fever subsides, but you're still feeling sick. Um, body begins to return to normal. If the disease fails to decline, then usually fatal to patient. Convalescence. So this is the end uh, where you have no symptoms or anything, but you're still infectious. So patient recovers from illness, tissues repaired and return to normal. So length of covalence period depends on nature of pathogen, site of infection, overall health of patient. All right. So movement of pathogen out of the host, portals of exit. So here we have a lot of them. Skin flakes. Wow, that's really crazy. I wonder what disease capitalizes off that. So let me see here on my notes just what is relevant. Where and when throughout a population. Frequency of disease, occurrence of disease using two measures. Let's keep on scrolling until we see that. I don't think we need to know this, but we'll just read over it just to give some more context so the rest of the information sticks. Direct contact would be like kissing and bites, indirect contact, drinking the same glass, playing on the same toy, and getting cut. Droplet transmission would be like sneezing, airborne, waterborne, foodborne, mechanical, biomechanical. I don't know what. Uh, I don't know what makes bodies of flies and roaches different from lice, mites, and mosquitoes. Maybe like the when they're dead. Anywho, okay, pig. Wow, that is so much meat. Pigs are huge. So here's some notes. I'm kind of tempted to go over this. Acute disease, so disease which develops really rapidly. For those in AMP, we just did that. Acute left ventricle heart failure. Chronic disease, disease with usually mild symptoms that develop slowly and last a long time. Subacute, disease whose time, course, and symptoms range between acute and chronic. Asymptomatic, latent disease, communicable disease, contagious disease. Non-communicable disease, disease that pass from person to person, level of action. Smaller region of the body, systemic infection, whole body, focal infection. Right. So epidemiology is a study of where and when diseases occur and how they are transmitted within population. Upon demi, people, study. Epidemiology of infectious disease. I keep on reading that out, even though it's the same on each side. Frequency of disease. So this is when we're back on track for reading relevant stuff. Okay. Can you guys tell I'm getting tired? Frequency of disease. I got to get back on track, guys. I'm doing this for you. Frequency of disease. Occurrence of disease using two measures. Uh, frequency of disease, track occurrence of disease using two measures. Incidence, which is number of new cases of a disease given in an area during a given period of time. So new cases. And prevalence is number of total cases of a disease in a given area. And I don't know why he was mentioning it a whole bunch, but prevalence can never be, incidence can never be bigger than prevalence. I don't know why. Obviously, Occurrence also is evaluated, but in terms of frequency and geographic distribution. So this is kind of where he was talking about how epidemiologists track everything, including here's my notes: age, location, and time of year. So he kind of gave this example of like people are getting huge spikes during the summertime, so it's like people are outside more often, and older people are getting it. So that's just kind of they take everything into account. I wouldn't have taken account the season it is. It's pretty smart. Uh, so why do they report their data in so many different ways? Using a variety of formats enables epidemiology to observe patterns that may give clues to the cause. Uh, so basically, epidemiologists take tons of notes and do lots of charts because they're very smart. Uh, so so yeah. So here's age group, here's month, and here's location. So really tracks down the disease. Super cool. Terms used to define disease occurrence. So endemic disease. Uh, so this is interesting. Is typically present in the region. Uh, so that would be like That would be like the common cold rolling around every, every winter. Endemic, typically present in the disease. Sporadic occurs irregularly and frequently. That one's easy to remember because of the word. Sporadic. Epidemic, endemic, epidemic. Epidemic we should be familiar with. It's like if the common cold were to just get out of hand and everyone got it. Present in greater frequency than usual. And pandemic is multiple epidemics and multiple continents. So epidemics, disease occurring in more than one continent. So illustrations to see different types. So endemic, we see like a normal range. People are getting sick. There's common colds out here. Sporadic is like things are just popping out. Epidemic is like a very strong case. Like the common cold got out of hand here, and pandemic would be across continent. Okay. Uh, Epidemics may have fewer cases than non-epidemics. Um, uh, happen on time. Descriptive epidemiology. Sorry, guys, I'm getting distracted. So here's an example of the blue line being endemic, which is like this is the expected number of disease. Epidemic is when it gets out of that range, and yeah, I don't know. We'll read this. I don't think it's important, but we'll read it. Descriptive etymology. Um, Hold on, I'm getting a phone call. Hello? Hey, babe. Hey. In the garage door. Yeah. Okay, I'll be back, but we're not done. I'm almost done. I'm on chapter page 7. You can kind of, it's very small. Okay. Back to our hero. As the summer of 1884, a major cholera outbreak struck Soho, a neighboring neighborhood in London. Within a week, 500 people died. All occurrence of Cambridge Street. Oh, so this all happened in one area, right? I remember this story now. So it kind of it shows this, and it's like obviously there's something here. Let's check the water pumps, and I think that was it. It's just that it was in the water pumps. Nationally notable infectious diseases. I don't think we need to know that at all. I think that's just some world building. All right. Epidemiological studies. So there's descriptive epidemiology. So careful tabulation of data concerning a disease, records of location, times, and disease, collecting patient info, age, gender, occupation, health history. Try to identify an index case. So patient zero. In this case, it's index case. I'm more familiar with patient zero, so if that helps any of you guys. The first case of a disease in a given area or population sometimes can be difficult or impossible to identify. And there's also analytical epidemiology, which seeks to determine the probable cause and mode of transmission and methods of prevention. So this is more concerned with trying to figure out where it came from, why. And this is more like, practical. What do we do with this? How do we, go about it? So this is often retrospective. So the investigation occurs after the outbreak has occurred for future outbreaks. And there's also experimental epidemiology, tests a hypothesis concerning the cause of a disease. So application of Koch's postulates. This is my girlfriend that who is so kind.
Hey.
So hospital epidemiology is what we would be concerned with. So nosocomial infections, healthcare associated infections. So he was talking a lot about this just because that's what he was concerned with when he was doing research or whatever. Being Dr. Walter. Hospital acquired infections are infections that are not present or incubating at the time of admission to the hospital. Types of healthcare associated infections. So there's exogenous, pathogen acquired from healthcare environment. Endogenous, pathogen arises from normal microbiota within patient. Latrogenic results in modern medical procedures like the catheter. And super infections, which are antimicrobial drugs. Use of antimicrobial drugs inhibits some of resident microbiota, allowing others to thrive. The ones that are don't care about the drugs. So exogenous, pathogen acquired from healthcare environment. Endogenous, outside, inside. Latrogenic is just the one that's about catheters and stuff. Stuff about. I just activated Siri. I've never done that before. I didn't even think I had my Hey Siri. Oh, that's so weird. I have no idea why that turned on. I don't have Hey Siri turned on, so that's so weird. That is so weird. Transmission from population of hospital. So, and the best way to prevent this is washing our hands. Factors influencing healthcare. Exposure to numerous pathogens present in healthcare setting include many that are resistant to antimicrobial agents, the weakened immune system of patients who are ill, so they're pretty susceptible to it, and transmission of pathogens among patient healthcare from staff and visitor patients, and so yeah, basically it's getting crazy at the hospitals. There's also vehicle transmission, so airborne transmission, so respiratory mucus, aerosol, cloud of small droplets and solid particles suspended in the air. So the measles virus does this, sneezing does this. Dust particles can carry staphylococcus, streptococcus. So strep can be carried by dust particles. Interesting. Changing bed linings. These are all things that can make things go into the air. So waterborne transmission important to spreading gastrointestinal diseases, amoebic dysentery, cholera. So vehicles just being like what the I thought we were going to talk about cars. It's about just what the bacteria is using to get to you. So foodborne pathogen transmission, pathogens on food that is undercooked. So this is all pretty simple stuff. I'm gonna go over it. Um, so I'm at the end of my notes, which is good, but we still have 20 slides. So I wonder what if Walter wanted us to get cut off here. Sharing of data among. So I'll read the last of my notes, and we can just skim over this. Sharing of data among public health organizations, agencies at local, state, national, and global levels. So we have the CDC, World Health Organization, and Public Health Service. I think just be familiar with those modes of infections. So there's contact transmission from person to person. Oh, okay. So there's some stuff here. Oh, okay, we'll just go over it. So direct contact typically involves person to person touching, kissing. Zoonotic diseases would be like touching and biting and scratching from your cat. Vector transmission. So arthropods can transmit disease. Biological vectors transmit pathogens, serve as hosts for multiplication. So this is kind of how we talked about how pathogens can't really live outside of the human body for too long. So they kind of need a reservoir to hang out at and grow. Vectors that transmit diseases typically biting arthropods. So mosquitoes, ticks, lice, and biting flies. I wonder why it's specifically arthropods. Epidemiology of infectious. I keep on reading that. Hospital epidemiology. Oh, so the prevention is washing your hands. Sharing of data. So these kind of coordinate and share data to public health, so everyone gets listed. Role of public health agencies in interrupting disease transmission. So these agencies work to limit disease transmission, so enforce cleanliness, reduce disease vectors and reservoirs. So these guys are helping fight, and also public health education, like disease, like sexual disease awareness, important. So we have a break time here. Virulence factors. So I think this is just yeah, that's it. Because these are just the rest of the slides that are just kind of here always at the end. Pathogens spread by fomites. So fomites are inanimate items that are inadvertently spread through pathogens to new hosts. So fomites is another word. He didn't go over it though, so I don't think he would really quiz some of this. Another virulence factor that he didn't really write about that's on his secret slides is capsules. Capsules of many pathogenic bacteria are effective virulence factors because they are composed of chemicals found normally in the body. So this would be like just like how we talked about encapsulated bacteria, but also viruses with envelopes. That'd be a great example. Droplet transmission. These are just I don't know what to do about these slides. I wonder what he does. They're probably just slides that he used to teach, and he's taking them out. All right. Uh, okay, so we're at the hour mark. We're done. So thank you guys. Bye.